Let me take you back to the year 2015. Women are still called divas. NXT is just gathering steam, and we are going to Brooklyn for the first ever NXT takeover outside of the Full Sail Arena. And we're going to not the main event. That was Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe. We're going to Sasha Banks versus Bayley for the NXT Women's title, held, of course, by the legit boss herself, Sasha Banks. So, a little bit of background on this match. So, this was the day before SummerSlam 2015, and Sasha, Becky, and Charlotte had already been called up to the main roster. And they, along with Bayley, are what's known as the Four Horsewomen of NXT, the people that are really propping up the then Divas division of NXT. It feels very weird saying Divas like then, like in 2015, it was still Divas.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the things that came across watching this back, was that it was because in my head it's the women's revolution in wrestling that happened.
Well, it's the women's evolution, and they're calling it the women's revolution.
But, it's very much at this time Stephanie McMahon saying the Divas Revolution, and just looking back, and it feels so recently, and it goes to show how much everything has kind of changed, I guess.
Yeah.
But it just is so jarring to hear.
It feels very weird, yeah. Those four horsewomen, or four horse divas,
as they love to be called.
They really made their name in a fatal four-way for the NXT Women's title. I think it was called NXT Fatal 4-Way. And this week was the 6-year anniversary of that match, so this was a very timely match I chose. I wasn't aware of that at the time I chose it, but, I am great. So Sasha, Becky, and Charlotte got called up. They were going to be on SummerSlam the next day, but Sasha still had to defend her NXT Women's title. It was very weird how they brought them up because, it was the whole idea. For a long time, you had Paige on the main roster, and she was feuding with the Bella twins, Nikki and Brie, and it was all about how no one wanted to team with her to take them on. So what they did was they had Stephanie McMahon come out and say, "I've made these teams for you guys." So you had the Bellas and Alicia Fox, which already existed, and then she went, "Right, Paige, I've got two friends for you." It's like if you were the shy kid at school and no one wanted to hang out with you, and then you just got people from the year below and be like, "They're your friends now. They're your crew."
Speaking from personal experience there.
Yes, completely. As the person from a younger year who got made to befriend the lonely person. You got Paige, Charlotte. Charlotte and Becky were brought out to be Paige's friends, and then they also just randomly created a stable of Naomi, Tamina, and Sasha Banks.
Tamina at this point hadn't been seen for ages. It was just have Tamina.
But I also love the idea of this is the new generation of women's wrestling. Who do we want? Tamina. Create two factions. Sasha, Naomi, and Tamina were known as Team Bad, which stood for beautiful and dangerous, which they certainly were. And then Paige, Charlotte, and Becky were made into a stable which was called the Submission Sorority for about a week. And it very quickly got changed because Submission Sorority was already existed. It was trademarked as a porn website. It was a lesbian porn, I do believe, which lesser podcast hosts there would make a joke about Paige, but I'm not going to go that road because that was how did I was exploitative? It was horrible, and I will not make a joke about it. And then they decided to change the name from Submission Sorority due to the porn links, and they thought, what can we name Paige, Charlotte, and Becky? What's a cool, inventive name for them? Paige, Charlotte, and Becky. Team PCB, that's their name. Which also sounds like a drug.
Yeah.
You can imagine being offered some PCB in a nightclub toilet.
Well, not at the moment, of course.
Not at the moment, yeah, because at the time of recording, the UK is in a national lockdown. So those three got called up. Bayley is, of course, left behind, and that plays into the story. She works her way up the NXT roster, coming back from an injured hand, feuding with Emma, who is probably the other first person in the sort of women's evolution. It's a shame that Paige and Emma are both sort of not involved with WWE anymore. Paige not even involved in wrestling really, because they were the two that started it. But we'll talk more about that later, I imagine. So then Bayley worked her way up, beat Emma in a feud, and then had to beat Charlotte and Becky in consecutive weeks to get the number one contendership, where she would face Sasha Banks. As I mentioned, this is the first takeover outside of Full Sail. The one thing that really stuck out to me is Bayley, obviously, I think, is hugging, and in Full Sail is sort of the same crowd every week. You get to know them. There were a lot of kids there. So she would just go and hug the kids because she knew where they were. Izzy, her super fan, who was always there dressed as Bayley. Very sweet. That was very sweet when she go over and hug them. But then when there's a bunch of sort of like grown men from Brooklyn going like, "Give me a hug, Bayley," like it has different connotations. I think that did hurt her eventually when she moved on into the main roster. But let's go on to the match itself, and we once again get another appearance from Stephanie McMahon. Hooray!
Whoop, whoop.
She's trying to sort of force her way into being part of this women's evolution because she is a woman on the board of WWE. She's like, "Yep, this was definitely my idea. I pushed for this." And it was like, I don't think you did.
That's the thing, as it always seems to be. It's like something gets over or something becomes important, then suddenly it's like, no, this was definitely a top-down approach that we've completely been planning for. And
well, look, but that's the thing. If Triple H had come out and introduced it, I think less people would have been annoyed because he, is in charge of booking NXT. He took that initial, I don't want to call it a risk, but that initial sort of
it's just a change of approach in how they dealt with female talent.
To do it differently, and he gave Emma and Paige like a good length of match at the first NXT Takeover, and he's continued to push. If he'd have done it, it makes sense. And some people have theorised that the reason he did it is because he had 3 daughters, and so it sort of changed his mindset. So interesting to see what the wrestling landscape would be like if Triple H had sons, but that's a larger point for a different time.
It's one of those things, just to flag and just to link it to last week, about how Triple H is seemingly responsible for some of the greatest moments in wrestling of recent years and also some of the very worst. Like he's right in there.
There's moments where you're like, "Oh, I love Triple H," and then there's moments where you're, "Oh, fucking Triple H!" Like
that is so annoying. Triple H.
Yeah, I refuse to change. And good old trippers, like Reddit, there's a wrestling Reddit page called Squared Circle. They once, because one NXT was so good, sent him a fruit basket to like say that they loved him. But equally, there's times when the internet wrestling community is not particularly fond of Triple H.
Most notably when he announced his support for West Ham United.
Yeah, Trippers is a hammer. We'll touch briefly on this as football fans as well. Did you obviously saw WWE's post about the title race?
Yeah,
and it had superstars in football shirts. The funny thing about the Premier League is there's not a title race at the moment, and there's definitely not an 8-team title race. Like Man City have won the league. They should have just been a big picture of, was it Cesaro?
Yep, Cesaro. I was going to say, like, the obvious winner that is going to completely dominate, and they give that to Cesaro, who...
Yeah. Cesaro should be like Wolves or someone shit.
He's better to watch than Wolves.
Yeah,
like, he's good to watch, but useless. Brighton.
Leeds.
Fair.
So, yeah. United got King Corbin, which I was upset about. Well, not King Corbin. We're like
King
Cena.
Cesar.
Yeah, King Jeremy Corbyn. Still not got over that election defeat. He's my king. He's just on the side of the weird world of WWE trying to appeal to the British market by putting Dolph Ziggler in a Villa shirt.
Well, it worked. We're talking about it now.
That is true. It did work because you're talking about it now. That's a reference to our Year 8 school days that I'm sure everyone else enjoys. So Steph's out there talking about the Divas Revolution. Ugh. And also saying, get ready for your main event. It's not the main event. There's another match after it. The main event is the last match. I hate this idea that we've got 4 main events. No, you don't. You can only have one main event. Whatever is last is the main event.
Yeah. all right, CM Punk over here, but like
I am sat cross-legged as well.
the
I don't
actual
even hate you, Ibby. What I hate is this idea you're the best. You're not the best. I'm the best.
Shut up. No, but like the actual quote is, WWE doesn't just put them in the main event; they are the main event. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't, and they're not. Literally up to until the next pay-per-view, women have never main evented a pay-per-view. So we put you don't. This has been a very hard road that women female wrestlers had to fight for a long time.
Stephanie, you're a liar.
Stephanie then fucks off, thankfully, and we get the probably my favourite part of the match, or at least what I always go back to with this match that makes me love it the most. Probably one of the greatest ever WWE pre-match packages. And WWE are, for all their faults, they always smash it out of the park with their pre-match packages, and you see this sort of Bayley being left behind, Bayley never quite winning it in front of her family, in front of the Full Sail crowd that's really embraced it. She's always just like a millimetre off winning, or she's always getting screwed over by people that she thought were her friends because she's this big, huggy, nice person. And then you get Sasha just being like, boo, shut up, life's not a fairy tale. And it's just like, it just sets those two characters up perfectly, and it sets the narrative perfectly. So even someone who wasn't watching NXT at the time, or maybe didn't know the background to this match, could immediately get into it just from that pre-match package. I mean, is that true? Because you are of that category.
Well, so this is the one thing I wanted to point out, is that actually this very much was in the time that I was watching wrestling. Like, I remember vaguely watching NXT, so I was mostly watching Raw and SmackDown and this kind of thing in this year, but I did get into NXT on and off, and we've said previously, like, a few, I think 2 takeovers after this was Takeover London, where we both went together. But watching it back, because I'd kind of forgotten a lot of the story behind this, and it is, you're right, for someone that then goes back, just watches that package, you know exactly where you are with the storyline, you know who you're rooting for, you can kind of see how much it means just in that 2 minutes or however long it is, just in going over that, and you're already there, you're invested in the story.
Pure emotion.
Absolutely.
So the package is shown, they make their way to the ring. Out first is the challenger, Bayley, and she's got her Bayley buddies, the wacky waving inflatable arm tube men, which when she turned heel, she attacked with a sword, which is one of the greatest ways to turn heel I think there is. But that's later down the line. She's still super babyface Bayley. Then out comes Sasha in a SUV. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Blacked out SUV.
Neither of us drive.
With bodyguards looking every inch the legit boss that she is. So we start the match. Sasha sort of takes control early on, and she's working over Bayley's broken hand, which they sort of set up very early on that Bayley's coming back from this hand injury. Smashes it into the steel steps, smashing it. It was
takes the bandage off, and then puts it into the steel steps. It's it's one of those things that sometimes, particularly in WWE, it's very hit and miss whether they actually play into these kind of things or not. And to see it kind of work through as a through line through this match and a complete, mini story arc in terms of the whole thing it works out, it's pretty brutal.
It literally like that would hurt. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, how could that not hurt? How can you fake that? So Bayley's out on the floor, the ref's having a go at Sasha. Oh, don't do that, that's bad. Sasha gets back in the ring, gives it the classic heel, like, yo, I'm the best. I'm sure that's what she was saying.
Verbatim there.
And then the ref's leaning through the ropes, checking on Bayley. Are you all right, love? He's like, no, my fucking hand hurts. And as he's doing that, Sasha leaps over the ref, over the top rope, and onto Bayley. One of the coolest spots I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's so fucking cool. Like Sasha at this point, and like going back and remembering this was like shit hot. Like,
this is like Sasha. Like this is like
by that I mean in terms of appeal. Not I'm not being lewd, but just to clarify, but like in terms of like the popularity and just was just
heel, like,
completely on top, and was
the
such
character
a
is
heel.
just like perfect. Just because even like she comes out and people cheer her, obviously because it's that smarky crowd and she is class, but they are, and everyone knows. I think everyone's aware it's kind of going to be a passing of the torch in a way because Bayley's still in NXT Sasha, but she manages to just get people to hate her even though they love her, and I think that's a lost art in wrestling that people. A lot of heels can't actually be heels. So back in the ring, Sasha's doing her top rope knees thing. Few attacks from Bayley. She goes for the Bayley to belly a few times. Eventually, Sasha
second week in a row we've had a lot of belly suplexes.
Yeah, Steiner and Bayley are very similar. Sasha eventually gets the bank statement in on Bayley and smashes the hand again, which is something as Bayley's reaching for the rope break, Sasha smashes the hand. It's something that you rarely see, like when people have someone in a submission that when the person's reaching for the rope, they just attack the hand. I thought that was cool. It's something I never thought you'd do. It does make sense, and obviously playing into the injury as well, it was very very good from our Sasha.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that comes across in that move and throughout the match is how kind of like frantic and how kind of uncontrolled and how there's a little bit of, it's a little bit wild, it's a little bit dangerous because obviously we're so used to seeing both of these wrestlers as really, really good kind of technical wrestlers, but there's an element of this where some of that goes out the rule book and it is quite desperate from both sides in terms of how to win it, and that just really adds to the drama, I think.
Well, it looks like they actually want to beat each other up and hurt each other, and like they're both like desperate to win. So a particular quote from Corey Graves I noticed you liked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I think it was just after the hand in the steps bit.
Yeah,
and like they're all, you've got two of the commentators just like sounding genuinely worried, and Corey Graves is just like, well, she may have broken the hand of Bayley like a boss. It's like, if she's really broken her hand there, Corey,
Corey, that is very insensitive.
There's being a heel commentator, and then they're just gloating in someone's genuine injury. It's like, come on, Corey. Especially as someone who's had his career,
I was gonna say,
disrupted and ended by injury.
Come on, Corey,
bad form.
Get a bit of perspective. And so Bayley then reverses that bank statement and gets into a bank statement of her own. Sasha reaches the ropes. This match really builds as well. Like, you get all that front, but it always feels like it's building. It was about the same length as the Steiner Triple H match, and it didn't feel like it. No. I just want to double check because, to me, watching that back, it went so quick. It felt like a.
I think this is 18 minutes.
18 minutes. So it's pretty much the same length as the. And that Steiner Triple H match, I felt like I was watching that for about a week, whereas the Bayley Sasha match felt like a couple of seconds. Like, it just built. So frantic, but also it was frantic from the start, but built in pace. It was class.
And then it's one of those things. It's the classic. It's the art of the storytelling. But when she does reverse this bank statement and the crowd go up, you're just like, whoa, this is it, Bayley, come on. And like, again, even me kind of forgetting a lot of the story behind this, or just forgetting the match in general, and then coming back and watching, even then you still feel a little bit like, okay, something's happening here. This is brilliant.
We build to our finish, which is Bayley getting the inverted Frankensteiner from the top rope. And it looks like Sasha just gets absolutely killed. But the one thing I sort of noticed with the women's wrestlers is obviously the sort of women's bodies are different to men's bodies, and women can be more flexible. And sometimes some of the way Sasha lands, it looks like she's landed straight on her neck and is going to die, but she's just absolutely fine. Like, she wrestled a match the next night. Whereas, if someone like Scott Steiner had attempted something like that, I think Scott Steiner and Triple H would both be dead. So she gets the inverted Frankensteiner, pops up, and like the crowd are absolutely on their feet, going crazy. Gets the Bayley to belly, 1, 2, 3. Big sort of emotional moment, and then Charlotte and Becky come out to celebrate with Bayley and Sasha, and it's like their version of the MSG curtain call. Except kayfabe has already been dead for a long time. So it's,
I was going to say, a much less controversial incident.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knew they were friends, so it's not a big deal. So what happened next? Well, the very next night was, of course, SummerSlam, one of WWE's biggest pay-per-views, which should have completely, outdone NXT Takeover Brooklyn, but it did not. It starts the trend of NXT takeovers happening before WWE pay-per-views, and NXT just absolutely outshining WWE. So let's have a look at a few of the matches on SummerSlam. So you got Sheamus versus Randy Orton. Wow, we were.
So I think just before we go in, like I said, so I started watching wrestling pretty much full time again in SummerSlam 2014. And this SummerSlam 2015 felt like the beginning of the end for me in terms of like this night. I was just like, because one of the matches, I'm sure we'll get onto it, features two of my favorite wrestlers, and there was hardly any build for it. And it just was such a real damp squib on the night. But yeah, what are your highlights of this SummerSlam event?
Well, he of course had Dolph versus Rusev in the whole Rusev, Dolph, Lana, Summer Rae love square. I mean, Lana and Rusev have been put in some poor storylines throughout the time, and this is one of them.
But it's also like it's that hard thing when you do know so much of the real life elements. It's like, yeah, but we know they're married.
Yeah, it's stupid. You had Neville and Stephen Amell, who is a like American actor, versus King Barrett and Stardust. I actually remember I liked that match.
Yeah, for
a little 7-minute celebrity match, it was fine.
It was fine. It was just, what on earth were they doing with Neville at this point? Like, that was so odd.
They were presenting him as like a superhero because cape.
So it was Adrian Neville, as he was known in NXT. Then he debuts on the main roster as just Neville, so that's never a good sign. As Antonio Cesaro and was it Alexander Rusev? We'll tell you.
Or Biggie Langston as well. It's just Biggie.
But like, I remember talk on the internet at the time as well that they were thinking of maybe giving Neville a mask as well and making him more like a proper Mighty Mouse character.
Yeah,
and it was just like, where has this come from?
Yeah,
because it's that thing where. But like, sorry,
Vince thought Neville looked weird, and so he was like, "You're a mouse man." And like, okay,
but it's just like, and this happens time and time again, where the characters are seemingly built up so well in NXT to then come to the main roster and completely change who they are on the fly, when NXT is supposed to be about building up the character and working on that to make it work for the main roster.
There's no element you've got to sort of reintroduce them on the main roster, but
as a superhero mouse
is probably not the best idea. Ryback defeated the Big Show and the Miz in a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship in a 5-minute match. I have no memory of that match, but I'm going to guess it was shit.
It doesn't sound very good.
It doesn't sound very good at all. Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns defeated the Wyatt family. I think that was Ambrose coming back, maybe? Or one of
That sounds about right.
But it certainly didn't live up to the other Shield versus Wyatt family matches of the past. Seth and John Cena in a winner-takes-all match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE United States Championship, with Seth going over because of being helped by talk show host Jon Stewart, which with a steel chair. Very interesting decision. And then we get the Divas match of the night with these new exciting Divas. What should we do? Should we build them up in a storyline? No, let's put them all in one match together. So we get a 3-team elimination match. The former Submission Sorority, now Team PCB, versus Team Bad and Team Bella, with Team PCB going over. I remember everyone hating this because you'd had the Bayley Sasha match the night before. It's like, this is what we want, and then this is what we get. Yeah. Just the same sort of, just putting all the Divas together in a pointless elimination match. Oh, but it's Paige and Charlotte now. It's different. It's like, no, it's exactly the same.
And then, Kevin Owens defeating Cesaro.
I have no memory of that either.
There was very rarely, there wasn't really a build to it, but at the time, these are two of the best in terms of actual wrestling on the roster. I think for some people, this is a bit of a dream match scenario if you're a big wrestling fan. And it was given hardly any build. It came after that match, which was completely derided, but also so many people were looking forward to the kind of big, the big SummerSlam match involving all these women wrestlers that had come up through NXT that everyone was a huge fan of. And then having this then before The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar as well, it's in a completely dead space on the roster.
Yeah.
I can't remember anything from the build other than I'm guessing one of the Cesaro just came out when Kevin Owens was in the ring at some point, or like.
Yeah. From looking it up, I think they had both competed in John Cena's US title open challenge, and both come close and were like, "I'm better than you. I'm better than you. Let's fight."
A classic build there. But I just remember like it being really dull and slow paced as well, and it felt like a missed opportunity. But I would say that because I would watch Cesaro in most circumstances.
And then speaking of slow, we then got the main event, which was Brock versus Taker. There was like quite a good build to this, where they were like fighting each other and like everyone was holding them back. But just a fucking awful match. Went for 18 minutes. And, this is Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker in 2015. They don't give them 18 minutes. I think they very quickly worked out, when they brought back Goldberg, that the idea was with these sort of old but big names, just having like 6-minute matches at most, finisher spams, and then just going from there. And Undertaker won by kicking Brock in the nuts, because that is Brock's Achilles heel. His Achilles balls for Brock.
Brock's Achilles balls.
Yeah, he should just wear a cup. Just wear a cup. You're always getting kicked in the nuts and losing. Wear a cup.
Solved it. I just wanted to speak about as well the Takeover Brooklyn card as well, because this also features some interesting matches and some people that are basically forgotten now. Okay. So the first match on that card was Jushin Thunder Liger defeating Tyler Breeze. I think it was his only WWE appearance or match.
Jushin Thunder Liger, it was his first WWE, and I think it might have been Tyler's last match on NXT. Because he got to the point now, he built himself up, and now he was like putting people over or doing the special sort of matches. But that's like a good set. Like Jushin Thunder Liger is a legendary sort of Japanese wrestler, so a good send off for Tyler. Yeah,
absolutely. Then the second match on the card was the Vaudevillains defeating Blake and Murphy for the NXT Tag Team Championship, and this was Blake and Murphy with Alexa Bliss in their corner, and the Vaudevillains had blue pants.
Blue pants.
Both of these tag teams I remember really liking. So the Vaudevillains obviously were pretty over with their gimmick, but like Blake and Murphy, I think, had one of the most underrated ring entrance musics, whatever the technical term would be. Just like really, really annoying, obnoxious dubstep.
The dubstep cowboys.
But it was really different compared to like everyone else. I think despite the fact that they, from what I remember, had very little character, it got the team over in a certain way.
Yeah, and these are annoying. Boo them.
Yeah, does its job. Then we had Apollo Crews defeating Ty Dillinger, which I'm seeing here was rated by Meltzer was a 1.5 star as well.
Bloody Meltzer.
I mean, Apollo Crews has finally started developing a character within the last year or so.
Turning heel now, which is going to be interesting.
But I think would this have been his first match?
Yeah, but the looks of the fact that he's facing Ty Dillinger, that's like very first match in NXT.
Yeah.
So I assume it's his first match in NXT.
You got Samoa Joe and Baron Corbin, and Finn Balor and Kevin Owens as the main event. Yeah. So a good card as well.
It's weird because my memory of that is that being a good pay-per-view, but listening to it back, other than Sasha and Bayley, I mean Finn and Joe as well. And I remember
Blue Pants getting the cheer
Blue
of the
Pants
night.
Was over as fuck. Like people forget. Apparently, she was like a big she had like a really big head backstage, and that's why they got rid of her. They can't have a big head if you have blue pants. But yeah, moving on from this, more looking at the careers of the two combatants. Eventually, they have a rematch at a Takeover Respect, which is again a great match. I also watched that after this one because I was like, maybe I should have picked that instead. Which was the first ever Iron Woman match in WWE and the first ever women's match to main event a pay-per-view in WWE history. One of my favourite moments in wrestling ever. So Izzy, the big Bayley superfan, the little girl, I think she's about 8 or 9. She's wearing a Bayley headband. Sasha goes over, rips it off her head, scores a point by smashing Bayley into the Titantron, getting Bayley counted out. And as she gets to that point to go 2 on ahead, she throws the headband back at Izzy, who is legitimately crying her eyes out. And Sasha is just like mugging her off. And oh God, it's one of my favourite things ever happening in wrestling, and it's making a little girl cry. Bayley, so Sasha, Charlotte, and Becky of the Four Horsewomen would go on to have a triple threat match for the new women's title at WrestleMania. So Charlotte had won the Divas title from Nikki Bella, but it had been changed to be called the women's title for this WrestleMania, as announced by Lisa. And Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha would compete for it in a sort of big moment. I think that was the real shift in how women's wrestling was viewed on the main roster. You know, it'd gone from the Divas title and then all these big multi-man matches, and then you get this triple threat, which is one of the main matches they promoted for that Mania. But Bayley not a part of it, which did feel a bit... We've still not had the Four Horsewomen at Mania together. It'd take a year for Bayley to get called up after NXT Takeover Brooklyn 1. So she got called up. She didn't get called up in their 2016 draft, so they split the rosters for the first time in a while in 2016. Called up some people from NXT, but not Bayley. She was not picked. But people did get picked from NXT with Nia Jax, Alexa Bliss, and Carmella. None of them had really made a name for themselves yet. And I think maybe they made the wrong decision delaying Bayley getting called up, because it didn't quite work for her on the main roster with the huggable gimmick. Because again, I think it is one of them. It works in front of a small crowd that see you every week and sort of hugging the building relationships. So she did seem a bit dead in the water, but she's since turned heel, smashing up the Bayley buddies, as I mentioned earlier. And that's been class. So yeah, fair play to old Bales.
It was one of those things, like, you know, and because you hadn't really seen her heel at all, it was, you never know how that one was going to go, I guess. And for it to have worked so well, it's been really good. You know, great for her.
Well done, Bayley. We also get, moving forward, a lot of the first ever women's matches that these Four Horsemen are pretty much involved in all of them. So we get the first ever women's Hell in a Cell, we get the first ever women's main event on a main roster pay-per-view. I think those were the same match, Charlotte and Sasha. We get the women's tag team titles, Sasha and Bayley. Bayley was the first person, you know, despite having struggles on the main roster, she was the first person to hold the NXT, the SmackDown, the Raw women's titles, and the women's tag team titles. They clearly were invested in her, despite the fact it looked like maybe she was put in fourth place of that four. So we get a lot of these big women's matches, big sort of historic things. I think WWE likes making history and opening that avenue of pushing the women. Like, wow, there's so many firsts we can do now. There's a whole other thing.
It's all thanks to Steph.
It's all that. Thank you, Steph. So Stephanie McMahon's WWE Women's Evolution, TM, is obviously one of the biggest changing moments in wrestling in the past 5-10 years. So we're going to have a little... We thought, you know, what better way to explain the WWE Women's Evolution than having two men discuss it and dissect it. So we'll have a little break, and then we're going to explain feminism to you. Feminism to you. Feminism to you. Feminism to you.